Good morning, everyone. I feel like there's already some themes we heard this morning that I think this might touch on a little bit. My name is Jessica Lange, and I'm the Interim Associate Dean for Library Technology, along with my colleague here, Gagandeep Dhillon. So bienvenue à Montréal, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how our planning exercises have sort of adapted and changed using tickets in JIRA. So I'll talk about a bit of our background and context, because it always gives a little bit of framing for what we're talking about, the methodology for tracking what I'm going to call our IT time expenditures. Oh,
Screen.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's just still sharing the old slide deck, I think.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Apologies again, everyone. We'll work on getting this a bit smoother. Sorry for the
Yeah, results and then what we did next. Oh, tick. So in terms of our context, we are a 12-person unit overseeing the bulk of the library's technology efforts. So all of the specialized library hardware and software, like your self-check machines, the installations of in vivo on our public computers, the web applications, including the website, but we have an institutional repository and A to M. And connections between the library and other McGill systems. So we have a lot of connections between like our student data and student feeds, right? Feeding into our like OCLC and our ILS. So we do a lot of the things. And within the unit, there is an application development unit, which Gagandeep here leads, which is 3 programmers plus 1 manager. And the way that they do their work is through an agile method, doing 2-week sprints. And then we use JIRA if you're not familiar, but JIRA is essentially not quite a ticketing software, but there's tickets and you can put points on it. And so that's the framework under which our unit is running. This is just a really pretty graph that my colleague Greg Houston. So last year we went through an exercise of trying to really understand what all are we responsible for in library technology. Just a light dusting of things. Now, this is a little like some of these are like third-party systems that we interact with, like HathiTrust, but some of them are in-house, tools we've developed for digitization, or as I said, some of the broader applications like the repository. The point is that, as per many of you probably know, it's quite a lot. There's quite a lot that we're responsible for and overseeing in the unit. And then the other thing, intro. So I became the interim associate dean just last November. So I've only been in this role for not quite a year at this moment. Previously, I was the coordinator for scholarly communications. So I was within the unit, but doing very much that sort of like institutional repository piece. So when I started in November, Gagandeep goes to me, it's like, Jessica, what's next year's projects? This is my face. Like, I don't think I had a cupcake in front of me either to sort of soothe the moment. So, great question. And so I didn't obviously know the immediate answer because, as I said, I'd been in the unit, but in a specific role. But I knew it had to include maintenance. I had been in the unit long enough to understand, and I think this was alluded to a little bit with Florida this morning, that thinking about maintenance was going to be important. Why? As a lot of you know, now there's a lot of variation in how we measure this, but somewhere between 60 to 90% of a system's life cycle is in the maintenance phase, right? The bulk of our systems live in maintenance, right? We get a lot of excitement in the development era, and we get a lot of push, right? Yeah, some nods from maybe our people around us in that point, and then I feel like they just leave us alone, and they're like, make that work after that, and then eventually, right at the end, you will retire it. I don't know about you, but by and large, what happens in this piece, this very, majority piece of our work, it's a bit of a black box, right? Like we know it's happening, but how much time are we spending on it? How are we dedicating resources to it? So when I started, that was sort of one of my first questions was how much time are we spending on maintenance? Because that is the bulk of what we're looking at. So we looked at the tickets in JIRA from January 1st to November 15th. Yeah, 2 weeks in, so let's go. So we went through JIRA, looked at our closed tickets, and then we started grouping them by system and by project, right? So e-scholarships or institutional repository. Like how much time, how many tickets went to eScholarship? How many went to OJS, went to Atom? We had a project, the Spotlight implementation. How much time did it take us to do that implementation? And then we added up the story points. So in Jira, the story points is, it's the terminology, but basically one story point equals 1 hour of work. Lots of caveats. This is obviously very dirty data. We had never done this exercise before. So there's a bit of cleaning up and trying to reclassify tickets. And story points are best estimates, right? Like, you might think it's going to take you 2 hours, maybe it takes you 3. Like it's, they're best estimates. So this was never meant to be a truly scientific exercise, but generally like a benchmarking of like, okay, how much time-ish compared to that are things going to? So this is the results by topic system. So the first one you can see in the far, the biggest one was our ILS. The reason why it got so much attention that year was because we had done a major integration with our offsite storage facility. So we just built if you want to drive out to don't drive out to Valleyfield. But we just launched a 2.5 million item offsite storage facility, which had a lot of integrations with our ILS, a lot of working with the APIs and the vendor software. Totally makes sense when I saw that number. The next number was like, what's going on with our digital collections? Like we hadn't done we were on the tail end of the Spotlight project, like that had started to finish, but that was by and large one of, a significant amount of time. And a lot of it had to do with maintenance. A lot of it had to do with the PHP upgrade. We have, the number keeps getting bigger because we keep finding more of them, like 90 independent digital collection sites. My colleague Melissa will be talking a little bit about this. We have that many sites, there's a lot of maintenance. So a lot of that number was going to them. And then after that, like the website and WordPress, the repository, general operations. As I mentioned, like it's not scientific. We're still working on our categorization, but we started to get a sense of what I'm going to call our maintenance load, right? Like just ish in a year where there's no major things happening on a system. Like how much does it take for us to run, right? So we knew for the intranet, eScholarship, OJS, and Atom, what I would call their general, maintenance capacities were, because they hadn't gone through anything major that year. It was just like a regular year for those systems of like bug fixes and minor upgrades. So that could help us kind of start to benchmark it. And then what we did next was, it's like the funnel. Okay, so we got 3 programmers, right? So we could kind of see how many points in a year-ish they had. So we start from that. And then we start to reduce, right? Okay, well, how much maintenance? Because nowadays with more and more security issues, like we can't not be upgrading these systems, right? Like we can't just be, well, it will not be, it may not be fine. So we actually have to build that into our planning, right? So we reduce it by the maintenance load of each system. Are there any major upgrades coming or like end of life kind of things? And then you're kind of like, okay, what's left, right? So then you bring it, it's almost working backwards. I think often planning has come from what's the cool, like what's the new project that's happening? And this is a bit of a flip of like, no, what do you actually have to work on? And then what's the capacity that's left? So, I made a fake math equation. So internal annual capacity minus maintenance is sort of the time left for additional projects. And then in terms of planning, so this is just an example. We started moving to a little bit of a quarter, like a quarterly, like quarter 1, quarter 2, because that helped us. So I noticed that the digital collections had a big question mark, but we didn't know what we were going to do with them yet. So we're like, okay, push digital collections to quarter 4. While we are figuring that out, what do we have to get done? Okay, the Atom has a 2.7 upgrade. Okay, let's clear that off in quarter 1. So starting to try to move our year in a way that we were kind of almost, once again, kind of backwards planning and slotting things. So it wasn't like, oh, a surprise, like we forgot about this, or this will rear its head in the fall. And I'll let Gagandeep talk a little bit about how it's been going.
Yeah, it's going well. We did this exercise that identified us like, okay, so some of the tasks were not like assigned properly in Jira, like not all the tasks were like in their right projects. So we identified and we fixed those tasks and assigned them to their correct projects. And this whole exercise also helped our developers to see that like, okay, how much time they are spending on the development side, how much time they are allocating towards maintenance. And also we find like, okay, now I guess it's time to allocate some time to learn their new skills also. So now it's easy for them to see that like, okay, so now how much time they are spending on their learning new skills to ensuring their continuous growth. Also, this is the whole exercise is keeping us more focused and like productive. So since we have now the clear view of our quarterly goals, so it's and their related tasks. So even if the project is blocked due to some external dependencies, we know what to work on next without any delays. The next step, I guess, like we are gonna do the same exercise next month. So some of the goals that I'm thinking, like, or some of the tasks that I'm thinking to track the estimated hours versus the actual hours time spent on those tasks. This will help us to plan properly. And also, like, I'm thinking like how we can better use Jira in terms of project and the task management. This will also give us the opportunity to review our results with the last year. This will like where we can see that where we can improve and what we did not anticipate. Thank you. Questions?
How closely do you have to work with the general IT department, and have you ever been faced with delays or setbacks because of this relationship?
Yeah, it's on a kind of a daily basis. We are working with them. And we have a very good relationship with them. Like over the time, they trust us now more, like, so give us more responsibility and more access now that the whole setup was they have dedicated like 1 or 2 full days in a week towards us, towards our needs. So yes, there is a delay, but like we are able to communicate well directly on Teams and via emails as well.
And I'll just quickly add, I think we're adding this into our planning now. So we're going to Red Hat 7 to 9, which has major external dependencies. And I was like, hey, we'll put it in quarter 2, but like make a note that this could really get pushed because we're relying so heavily on IT. So we're doing a bit of that as well.
Question is, you just had Jira. What advice can you offer to people who do not already have Jira to get inside your baseline? You make it so easy, I will tell you. What advice would you give folks who, at some other institutions that do not have a Jira baseline to jump off from?
We look at each other. I will say I was grateful that we had that data, and we've been using Jira for multiple years. I know that wasn't something we always used in the library technology department, and that we I can't remember at what point, but we did like integrate it into our planning. I mean, you could probably, if you weren't using like a time, it depends. Like some places will still use ticketing services. Like I know we use ServiceNow as the central IT, so you could probably still use if you have a general ticket service unit software to just even know what tickets are. Maybe not their story points, right? But you could see how many tickets are going to which things, and then otherwise. You'd have to work on something that's more transparent within your unit, like what's everyone working on, and then kind of start building up to, because I think, we didn't have it initially, so there might be resistance to tracking things so specifically. I don't know if you have anything to add.
It's just I would like to add one more comment on that. Like, I recommend use some kind of a software for this. Will help our developers to stay focused. Now they know what to work on for next 2 weeks, and this is keeping them away from all the other things that are happening across those sprints. So this is really helping.
Hi, can you speak to how you communicate information from Jira out to maybe non-IT management staff?
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah, it's still right now. Our major thing is like we run every 2 weeks a sprint planning meeting, so where we invite all our stakeholders over there, and we also like have been thinking that maybe it's time to send like that, like make that meeting broader, invite other departments and other to see that like how we are working and then what is the proper channel to get your projects in and better is for to ensure better communication with the other departments.
Hi, so we're also a JIRA institution. This might be just a us problem, but people love to leverage their personal relationships with people in IT to go around JIRA. Can you speak a little bit to like how you account for that in your data and in your workflow?
No. I mean, in some ways, when inviting the stakeholders to the 2-week meetings means that people, there's a bit of transparency, like everyone's in the room being like, we're putting these tickets in, right? And if you see some tickets making their way in more, and I think also we might see some transparency at the end of the year when we do this analysis, like, whoa, which is getting a lot of love, like, and so there might be a little bit of that reflection after the point. But yeah, that's a great question. So I think part of it is maybe the sprint planning allows people to see, and it's good and bad. Like we keep the technology unit is often behind the scenes. So sometimes I don't think people always know who they are, right? And so don't always know who to get to, which can be good in this case. So they'll send an email off and then we can just triage it appropriately. Did you have anything to add?
Good.
Yeah, but yeah.
Are there any questions? Hi, thanks very much for that. I'm going to refer back to the culture eats data for lunch or something. I wonder if you can speak to, has there been any response to what some might, not myself necessarily, but some might see as a drive to efficiency?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. When I started this exercise, it's funny, I took it from a place of, I was in the unit. So I heard anecdotally, like stress, right? Like there was a lot of stress about projects coming on, not being, the things. And so I took it from a place of like, if we plan better, we should hopefully have less unanticipated things happening that are, stressing people out. So I think, and I felt actually kind of heartened the other day. We were in a monthly meeting, and one of the programmers was like, "Yeah, can you look at like the server infrastructure and plan that for us, and like make sure like can you do an analysis on that so we can plan better?" So I don't know if I just lucked out. The people in the unit felt, but like, I was encouraged when someone asked me that. I was like, "Oh, okay, you didn't take this as like some like." Exercise to like, oh, you gotta get your points down, or like we're tracking you, but rather, like this is meant to help us and like decrease staff stress. And also, as Gagandeep was mentioning, like improve space for people to learn, because now we can build in time for professional development in a way that I think may have been a little more challenging before.
Yes, and then like most of the thing, like the whole exercise helped us to identify like nowadays like security is #1 priority. So now like the whole exercise, like now developers are like, okay, so can we allocate some time or reserve, like let's focus this quarter on the security things. Let's try to improve the infrastructure. So this also.